Gold price is soaring today. If it closes at this level, we will have a new all-time high. We're going to talk about this, and the IRS reporting requirements for stackers have gotten more lenient. I'm going to break down the changes here, and we may finally be getting that Fort Knox gold audit. Let's get into it. Buy your gold and silver online from SD Bullion. New customers get gold or silver at spot by visiting sdbullion.com/new. Thank you so much for watching. I do sincerely appreciate it. Gold is taking off today, currently sitting at $3,441 an ounce, up about $50. The reason? Last night, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion on Iran, targeting nuclear facilities. This morning, Iran calls Israeli strikes a declaration of war, and they have swiftly replaced their killed military leaders. The first thing to respond was oil. You can see crude futures are up about 6% on the day. The stock market is down as people are running to the safe haven assets, and all of this is playing into gold's rise today. Now, if tensions continue to escalate, I would expect we could see gold go even higher. Now, the previous all-time high close for gold was on May 6th. Gold actually hit $3,431 an ounce. We are higher than that right now. So if gold can close at this level, we are officially in new territory, a new all-time high for gold. Silver, on the other hand, is essentially flat for the day, although we are still near that 13-year high, so it's possible silver could play catch-up on Monday. We'll have to wait and see how this plays out. The IRS has changed the reporting requirements for when you are selling your bullion, and in fact, the changes are to the benefit of stackers. Here are some of the old reporting requirements which would have triggered a 1099-B form right to the IRS if you had sold bullion in these quantities or more. So 1 kilo gold bars, 1,000 troy ounces of silver, also 25 ounces of gold Krugerrands or maple leafs, and junk silver with the face value greater than $1,000. All of this would have triggered the 1099 forms. That's not the case anymore. The new rules state that you would only need to report to the IRS if you've sold more than 100 ounces of gold or 5,000 ounces of silver. So far fewer stackers are going to be required to fill out these IRS forms, and this is definitely a plus. It's very possible that your local coin shop will have not heard about these changes yet, so feel free to talk about it when you're there, and I'll put a link to this article down below in the description. Is the IRS finally going to be auditing the gold at Fort Knox? To find this out, I brought in an expert, and today I'm joined by the executive director of the Sound Money Defense League, JP Cortez. How's it going, JP?
Hey, Dragons, good to be with you.
Yeah, for sure. And we're talking about the introduction of the Gold Reserve Transparency Act. Sounds like this bill was introduced last week by Thomas Massie. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
That's exactly right. So this bill, the Gold Reserve Transparency Act of 2025, was reintroduced last week by U.S. House Representative Thomas Massie from Kentucky, who is known to be a liberty-minded congressman. And this bill calls for a comprehensive audit of United States gold. That's something that hasn't taken place in decades, in about 65 years. The last several audits are littered with faux pas as far as audits goes. These are practices that would never be allowed in a private depository, but have taken place in Fort Knox for many, many years. These are shady practices. These are incomplete audits, seals being broken at the Federal Reserve in the compartments where gold is stored, compartments being moved, opened, and not being re-audited, not being rechecked or retested. So there are a lot of really legitimate questions surrounding the gold holdings, America's purported gold holdings, and Congressman Massie, Congressman Nels, McDowell, and Davidson have all reintroduced legislation that was originally started by Ron Paul, and taking on the issue that he introduced back in the 90s. These legislators have now introduced legislation that would call for not just a comprehensive audit, but a full accounting as well. any accounting over the last 50 years between any countries that America may be holding gold for, any swaps, any leases, any encumbrances on the gold. Their gold might be there. I can't confirm whether or not it's physically there or not. We won't know until we open the vault doors. But if and when those vault doors open, the bigger question will be, if the gold is there, who owns it? Who actually owns it outright? Has it been pledged? Has it been leased? Is it encumbered in any way? These are questions that a full audit would show, and America has been actively avoiding this. It's kind of crazy that we need legislation for this at all. If America would be proper stewards of their gold, if they would provide these audits and transparency the way any good steward would, we wouldn't need this. But now we have to force them through an act of Congress. And so that's what we're doing.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. And if we could get into the bill a little bit, when would this take place? Let's say hypothetically the bill does go through. How long would we have to wait until they get into the auditing?
The audit would have to take place within 9 months of the bill's passage. So if the bill were to pass today, the audit would have to start. Now, this bill or this audit would be a very comprehensive audit and would take a long time. But once this audit is complete, then, so there is an impetus to start the audit. The audit would have to take place, and then there's a report due where the auditors, the third-party independent auditors and American auditors would come together and report to the Comptroller General, or the Comptroller General would report to U.S. Congress and Treasury a report of all their findings, a report of any security measures that should be taken place. And there are further questions about even the refinement of America's gold. In America's gold holdings, much of this is illiquid. It does not meet current market standards. This is 90% pure metal. A lot of it is coin bars that have been melted down into impure bars. So in order to even make this liquid as a reserve asset, we would need to refine the metal. So shortly after the bill's passage, we would get the audit, and then 5 years and every subsequent 5 years, an audit would have to take place, because as anyone who's ever obviously operated a depository or even stored anything in a depository knows that audits are not one and done. Things have to be audited and then re-audited. This is a constant process. Whereas the United States government has said, no, we audited this years ago, it's fine. Or no, we audited the seals on the cases, but there's no need to go into the cases to confirm what's in there because the seals themselves are intact. These are not legitimate comprehensive audit practices, and this should not be what's happening to America's gold. Taxpayers deserve better than this.
Yeah, I agree, we do. And I guess the big question on everyone's mind, JP, is how likely is this bill to actually go through? I mean, is this going to be a reality in the near future?
It very well could be. I think that starting from where we are right now, where we have 4 House sponsors, is a great jump-off point. From here, we're looking at a Senate bill. We're looking to get something introduced on the Senate side, a companion bill, hopefully with that language that I mentioned earlier about refinement of America's gold holdings. There are a lot of potential candidates on the Senate side. You have obviously staying in Kentucky, and in the steps of his father, you have people like Senator Rand Paul, who has been notably at least libertarian light for the entirety of his career. You can look over to the other side of the country in the Pacific Northwest, in places like Utah, where Senator Mike Lee has already given voice to the importance of auditing America's gold. And so he would also be a great candidate for an introduction of this bill. Another thing to look at is that the grassroots fervor is obvious. If you've spent any time online, if you've spent any time on Twitter, X, YouTube, wherever you stand, you hear a cacophony of voices of Americans saying, hey, we should audit this gold. Not because these are conspiracy theorists, not because they're hanging out on corners of the internet, but because there are legitimate questions surrounding America's gold holdings. And at a time where countries all over the world are seeking alternatives to the US dollar for final global settlement, at a time where countries, allies, and adversaries are looking at repatriating their gold out of the United States. Most recently, Germany discussed doing this. At a time where this is happening, the transparency of America's gold and the strength of America's economy should be shown and can be shown with transparency. President Trump has already, like you mentioned, already made positive comments in favor of this. So we know that the White House stands behind this, and this should be the vehicle that they choose to support to get them the audit and the transparency that they hope for. You know, unlike many of other Congress's expenditures, an audit like this would be relatively inexpensive compared to all of the other things that they're spending money on. And it would come with the benefit of transparency, something that can't be monetized, something you can't put a dollar value on.
All right. Well, thank you so much, JP. And if we have any further updates in the future, we'd definitely love to have you back on again.
Thank you for having me.
There you have it. It's looking like we might finally get that audit of the gold at Fort Knox. And if there are any updates, I'll be sure to post videos about it in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in my next one. Silver Dragons out.